without any community infections. Sydney experiences a surge in cases with a new cluster in the inner west and tighter restrictions enforced. UK regulators approved the use of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine with injections to begin within days. And Burns out. Selectors lose patience with the struggling Australian opener. Good evening, Manny Tsigas with ABC News. Victoria has recorded 3 new coronavirus cases, bringing an end to its 2-month COVID-free streak. The new cases are believed to have been acquired locally and linked to the Sydney outbreak. Christian Silva reports.
We can confirm that Victoria's 61-day run without a locally acquired COVID case has come to an end. The state government has confirmed that 3 people have tested positive. These people are located in the Melbourne suburbs of Mitcham, Hallam and Mentone. The government says that these people obviously are self-isolating at the moment and will be retested. Now, close contacts of these cases have also been ordered to self-isolate. Just confirming that none of these cases are linked to hotel quarantine. It is believed that they're linked to the outbreaks in Sydney. All of this comes on the same day that the Victorian government extended its hard border closures to certain parts of New South Wales. So today, the government said that anyone who'd been in the Wollongong or Blue Mountains areas in the last few days has until midnight tomorrow to get back into Victoria, or the borders will close.
To New South Wales, and Sydney-siders are being hit with more restrictions after a surge in coronavirus cases outside the Northern Beaches cluster. Sydney's inner west is on high alert as health authorities scramble to find the source of a fresh outbreak. Here's Ashley Raper.
The Premier warned Sydney to be on alert. Now there's calls for alarm.
We've seen the proliferation of cases outside the Northern Beaches overnight.
And that includes the emergence of a new cluster involving an extended family celebrating over the Christmas period. It originated in Croydon and there are 6 cases so far. 3 adults and 3 children who come from 3 different households. And 34 people have been identified as close contacts.
No indication there's any issues about not complying with the requirements, but you can imagine that if you've got an event on, you're catching up on the 20th December and then you catch up with another group of your family on this day, you can see that people will have attended multiple events.
While the gathering was in Croydon in the inner west, the family is scattered across Sydney, and just who was infected first and how is unclear. Overall, there are 18 new locally acquired cases in New South Wales. 6 of those are from the Croydon cluster and 9 are linked to the Avalon cluster. Then there are 3 more which can't be linked at this stage. 1 in the northern suburbs who'd been on the Northern Beaches for work, and 2 women from the same household in Wollongong.
We are doing our utmost to determine and detect and link all of those cases, but we may not be able to. But what is most important at the moment is that we break all current chains of transmission.
So the government is tightening restrictions from midnight. Visitors to a home will be limited to 5 people, including children. Limits on outdoor gatherings will also be reduced from 50 to 30 people.
We don't want New Year's Eve to be the cause of a super spreader. Had circumstances been different, we may have acted differently.
The government also wants aged care homes shut to visitors until January the 6th. Relaxing restrictions slightly for Christmas was always a risk, and it's too early to tell whether the move is to blame for the growing numbers. Regardless, the Premier stands by her decision and her government's current strategy. The opposition is urging for some changes to be made.
Now is the time to move towards mandating masks in those places of worship, in those busy shopping centres and across our public transport network.
Testing rates remain an issue too. People in Wollongong responded to the cases there, but across Greater Sydney there are calls for a greater turnout. Ashley Raper, ABC News.
The Northern Territory government has tightened its Sydney travel restrictions but stopped short of declaring the whole city a no-go zone. In addition to the existing declaration for Sydney's northern beaches, 7 suburbs are now on the hotspot list, including Croydon, Croydon Park, Lillypilly, Strathfield, Strathfield North and South, and Sutherland. It means from midnight tonight, anyone arriving in the Northern Territory from those locations will be sent into 14 days of supervised quarantine.
This emerging cluster, where there's a couple of mystery cases and some contacts that until we can see where that's going, it's appropriate to declare those suburbs of Western Sydney, inner Western Sydney, a geographical area of risk.
People forced to quarantine in the Northern Territory are charged $2,500 for individuals or $5,000 for families. The UK has approved a second COVID-19 vaccine that is cheaper and easier to transport than the Pfizer-BioNTech one. The first doses of the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine will be given on Monday. The good news comes on a grim day, with the UK recording its highest ever number of new infections, at more than 53,000 in one day. Here's Europe correspondent Nick Dole.
The good thing about this vaccine is that, unlike the Pfizer one, it doesn't have to be kept at freezing temperatures. It's far more robust. It's far easier to distribute. And so that means authorities will be able to get this across the UK to millions of people much, much faster than those other vaccines. And it's also really good news for the world because this is a vaccine that is going to be vital for developing nations as well. It's cheap, and as I say, it is robust, so you can get it out to countries where refrigeration is not as readily available. And it's good news for Australia too, because more than 50 million doses are already on order. So there'll still need to be a regulatory approval from the TGA in Australia, but it means that this vaccine is at least deemed here in the UK to be safe and effective, and it's likely a similar approval will be reached in Australia.
Rescuers in Croatia continue to search for survivors among the rubble of buildings damaged by a 6.4 magnitude earthquake. Tents have been set up to shelter those left homeless, and the army has been brought in to help with the cleanup. 7 people are reported to have been killed, including a 12-year-old girl in the worst-hit town of Petrinja. The US Geological Survey says it's the largest earthquake to hit the country since modern measurements began. At least 5 people are reported dead and dozens injured after an attack in Yemen's Aden airport. Loud blasts and gunfire were heard shortly after a plane carrying the newly formed Yemeni government arrived from Saudi Arabia. According to witnesses, the Prime Minister and cabinet members have been transferred safely to the city's presidential palace. Well, it's been a year since an endangered Tasmanian wedge-tailed eagle was rescued after becoming stuck in an illegal rabbit trap on the state's northeast coast. Despite his injuries, the eagle is back to full health and living a new life on the northwest.
Farah the wedge-tailed eagle is making the most of his new life.
He's just gone in leaps and bounds.
This time last year, he was spotted on the east coast, stuck in a rusty rabbit trap. The cruel image still angers wildlife carers.
These rabbit traps, they're designed for an animal not to ever get out of there again, so usually the damage that's done is just catastrophic.
Farah's back toe had to be amputated, meaning he can no longer survive in the wild. But after being gently nursed back to health, he's now thriving.
He has made some buddies on the outside world, so we do have a family of wedge-tailed eagles that come and visit now, and they nearly come every day and they'll sit and have a chat to him.
So he spends a lot of time at that high vantage point. Being an apex predator out in the wild, they want to spend that time up high to be able to look out. And his position within the park looks out right over Guns Plains. So he has that spot and he checks everyone out as long as they come up, and he enjoys a fresh meal served every day.
Josh Gordon remembers when Farah was brought in. He has a very simple message for anyone who uses rabbit traps.
Don't. Steer clear of them, they're illegal for a reason.
Wedge-tailed eagles are critically endangered in Tasmania, with only around 350 breeding pairs left in the state. The Department of Parks and Wildlife maintains a register of injured raptors, with the most recent yearly figures showing 99 were placed with carers. It's led to renewed calls for more volunteers and greater caution on our roads.
It's a really tough time of year for the wildlife, and you know, we love to see people take extra precautions all the time, of course, but even more so this time of year.
A small step in giving these majestic birds a better chance at survival. Jessica Moran, ABC News.
Well, despite a spike in coronavirus cases in Sydney, cricket officials insist the third match against India will go ahead next week. A crowd of 24,000 is expected, with exemptions in place to allow players to enter Queensland from New South Wales once the match is over.
Backup plans were being rolled out in Melbourne.
So the emergency, the contingency pitch being prepared.
But a deal has been pulled off at the 11th hour.
We're taking government advice as late as yesterday.
The Sydney Test will go ahead, but with some notable changes.
We will certainly be handing out masks on public transport going into the SCG and advising people to wear masks when they're not physically at their seat.
30% of crowd capacity was allowed into the MCG for Boxing Day. Health officials are aiming for 50% in Sydney. Some experts say that's far too risky.
I would just reiterate with my family, I wouldn't be taking them to this particular cricket because of their vulnerability. And so there is a risk.
In the current environment, it really is not good public health to continue with the Sydney Test. Yes, it's outdoors, but there are choke points.
Cricket Australia always wanted the Sydney Test to go ahead, but the main sticking point was Queensland's hard border. Players and a now greatly reduced number of staff and broadcasters will get exemptions to travel from Sydney to Brisbane for the fourth and final test.
We can keep the playing cohort, the relevant broadcast crew, all safe and then move safely into Brisbane.
It's a huge relief for charity organisers.
The Pink Test every year is our #1 fundraising event, and after the year that we've had, which has been incredibly tough in terms of fundraising, it was even more critical for us this year.
Players will train in Melbourne before entering far stricter quarantine arrangements in Sydney.
I think there's a few people off to golf today, and we're still in pretty strict conditions here, so there aren't too many options, but we'll get around each other.
Opener Joe Burns has been dropped from the squad for the remainder of the series after repeat failures, while David Warner and Test hopeful Will Bukowski have been recalled. Tom Maddox, ABC News, Melbourne.
Now to some footage of lava flowing inside the crater of the Kilauea volcano on Hawaii's Big Island. A 4.4 magnitude earthquake was recorded more than a week ago, with its epicentre located beneath the volcano's south flank. It's the most activity seen here since 2018, when a string of explosive eruptions over several months forced hundreds of people living nearby to evacuate.
We're still seeing a lot of shower and thunderstorm activity across the nation, and it will continue over the next couple of days. A new addition to the states that are seeing it is Western Australia. As the trough's now starting to move a little bit further inland, we are seeing it trigger some inland showers and thunderstorms. Perth itself, though, is forecast to remain dry. We've got a weak front just passing through Tasmania. This is bringing a few isolated showers about the south. They're far more widespread in New South Wales, where we're also seeing some localised thunderstorms. That's associated with this trough, but another trough over the inland will deepen over the coming days, and that'll bring more showers and thunderstorms over the inland of the state and also down into Victoria. And this trough is also helping to maintain the wetter conditions along the coast and eastern inland of Queensland. Fairly widespread showers and thunderstorms also up around the northern parts of the Cape and into the top end of the Northern Territory. So pretty much anywhere north of about Tennant Creek, we're looking at the potential of these showers and thunderstorms. And those northern areas are likely to remain wet over the coming days. Fairly widespread shower and thunderstorm activity. There'll still be some showers at times and some areas of rain along parts of the Queensland coast. We can see those thunderstorms developing through the inland in New South Wales and also northern parts of Victoria. That's as that trough deepens, and this high pressure system over Tasmania is helping to maintain and push that moisture a little bit further inland. So even if you don't see those thunderstorms or showers at your place, we are looking at very humid conditions. We've also got heat building through Western Australia, heat wave conditions developing in that state, although for Perth, not a return to the extreme heat that you've just experienced, but we are set to see temperatures remaining in the low to mid 30s over the next 1 week period. So hot, dry conditions there. Warm and dry through South Australia, but a bit showery along most of the east coast, and that will continue as we start off 2021. In fact, widespread showers in New South Wales and Victoria, and there is the potential that some of those showers and storms could become severe.
And that's the latest from ABC News. I'm Manny Tsigas. Have a good night.